Hello, everyone, and welcome to our April Talkmusic Webinar. We are so excited that you're here. I see some people already signing in and several that'll be coming in the next few moments. So we're going to give just a couple minutes here to let them get involved. And as you can see, Brother Chantry Dean is with us tonight, and I'm excited to have him as our guest tonight. So can't wait to hear from him. And I don't know if I sent out an email to let you know, but tonight his topic is going to be on worship leading. And he'll, of course, explain everything that he's going to talk to you about. But I think it's a great topic, something that he knows a lot about, has a lot of experience in, and that is great. I can't wait to hear him. He's a pastor, a worship leader, singer, musician, so he knows where we're at, and he's been there. So I'm excited to hear what he's going to tell us. And so if you're new to this tonight, I do see a couple of names that I don't recognize. If you're new tonight, make sure that you can jot down some questions while he's talking. You may think of something. We love for you to have questions, because this is what this is about, is you being able to ask questions and say, hey, what do you do with this? And what can you help me with this? And I'll put you on with him at the end when he's done, and we'll kind of just have a time of question and answer. And I really enjoy that part. Hopefully you will take part in that. So, all right. So Brother Chantry, I'm going to go ahead and get out of the way and let you take it. And we're going to have a great time tonight. And thanks for being here.
Well, it's an honor, Brother Hoffy. Thank you so much for allowing me to share something that I am passionate about, to talk about this subject. You asked if I would speak on the subject of worship leading specifically, and I'm certainly honored to do that. It's something that I love and enjoy. I know that this is a music webinar, worship webinar, and so the subject of worship is no doubt talked about multiple times. But before I really get into the practicals of worship leading, I just want to begin by reminding us that worship is more than something that we do in a church service, as we know, or on a stage. It's more than a song, or it's more than one experience, but it is truly should be our lifestyle. Cliche, maybe, yes, but true nonetheless. So just to remind us that before we play or we sing our songs, that we need to be more than ever committed to just serving God, and to cherish that relationship with Him, and to be grateful for the opportunity to serve in His kingdom. Sometimes amid the pressure to succeed, we can lose this focus. So just wanted to remind us of that. And if you are involved in leading worship, or playing in a service or a band, on a worship team, the most important thing that you can do to be effective in the ministry God has given you is to simply seek after God and to chase after a glimpse of His glory. So we've got to have that desire first. And before you learn to grow in your musicality or leadership skills, if you learn the life of worship, then you will never have a problem, I believe, leading others in worship. So it must start there, and worship to God should be the first thing on our lips each morning, especially us who are worship leaders. And I like to say that we're lead worshipers, and before everything else. So I just wanted to remind us of that the life of worship, a worship leader, obviously goes beyond the title, but we need to commit to be a functioning disciple of God, and a church member who happens to lead worship. So that's just something that I wanted to open up with and share with you. But now I want to get to just some practical things about worship leading. And one of the things that I feel that I struggle with, I don't, I'm sure that others have had this same difficulty. But have you ever asked questions like, what if I pick the wrong songs? What if no one responds to the set? What if they don't like this new song, or how this flows, or whatever? And for a long time, I mystified the selection of songs in worship. I felt like if God didn't speak the title of each song by name in order, I was going to somehow miss out on the will of God for that service. I over spiritualized at times and over complicated my planning process. So this led to hours of frustration and anxiety that really I didn't need to put myself through. Thankfully, I've gained a new perspective, but the question remains, how do you select the right songs to sing each week? That's a question I get asked a lot, and so I wanted to just give you some tips and things that I've learned and still have to work through. But how do you know if they're the right ones, etc.? So first and foremost, it is obvious, but we've got to be diligent in our prayer life. If you're not spending time in prayer about your worship ministry and what you are going to be doing on the weekend, then we've got to get back to that. Don't neglect God's role in the process of selecting songs. And this is the extreme where we look at the process as strictly administrative in nature, but we've got to be sensitive to the Holy Spirit's leading, God's Spirit leading us and guiding us. So God is already seeing the weekend. He's actually there right now and still with you as you were hearing this. It's just part of being God. He sees and knows it all. And so when you sit down to plan, ask God to guide you and to give you direction. Take some time to sit and reflect and to listen to what God would be speaking to you in regards to what you need to plan for the weekend. Also, know your audience. This is, it seems obvious, but yet this is a big mistake that people make in just failing to know their audience. If it's an older congregation, obviously you don't want to do youth music. Every song, it doesn't need to be something, that's just going crazy and real youthy. If you're at a conference, a particular, if it's men's conference or a women's conference, whatever, you've got to know your audience and plan accordingly. Be sensitive to who you're leading and build set lists that will set the groundwork for that particular group to have an awesome worship experience and a true encounter with God. The other thing is that we've just got to be more relaxed. I think sometimes worship leaders, and I've done it myself, we can actually quench the moving of God's Spirit or a worship service because we're so tense and uptight and yes, maybe even nervous. It's okay to be nervous, but we've got to reach a place where our nervousness is not getting in the way of God's Spirit moving or the flow of a service, and it's becoming very obvious that we're nervous or we're uptight. Don't let a mistake distract you to the point that it ruins a group's worship experience. If you make a mistake, most of the people, the majority, are not even going to catch it in a song. Hopefully they're somewhat engaged in worship, and they're going to miss it completely. You're going to know it because you're the one that's been working on it, practicing that. But most of the time they're not going to catch that. So don't allow a mistake that you make or a hiccup in what you do become an obvious mistake, and then it just kind of derails everything going on within that worship set or that song. So just being careful of that. We had one of our worship leaders in between one of our services just a couple of weekends ago. He came to me and said, "Pastor, did you hear the mistake I made?" And I said, "Actually, I didn't even catch it." And he went on to tell me that he had merged two words, and it was like he made up a word, and it was pretty humorous, and we laughed about it. But I said, I didn't catch it, and he didn't make it obvious, so nobody even knew about it. So just if you do make a mistake, just go on, move on, just keep going, because it's not about that. It's about the audience of one, and most people they're not even catching that. So relax a little bit, and then the other thing is being transparent. A lot of people, I think they feel like as worship leaders, we feel sometimes like we have to prove our worth to the rest of the team, that we've got our stuff together, and even if we don't, sometimes that we feel like we have to prove that, we're qualified to lead that practice, that rehearsal. And sometimes we can get a little intimidating to other singers and make them feel a little less. And we've got to be welcoming and inviting to our team, so it relaxes our team as well. And being transparent helps with that. Acknowledge that you're flawed, and that you can have a little icebreaker by saying, "Oh God, I hope I don't mess this up. It's been getting me all week as I've been practicing this song," or whatever. And it just helps them feel more comfortable with the fact that, oh, you know what, none of us are perfect, and it helps you get through it. So mistakes can be a good icebreaker, not only with the people you're leading in the band, but also with the congregation. So just making that practice a little lighter, and then when you go to sing with your congregation, there's a more relaxed feel, not in the sense of there's no move of God, but you know what I'm saying, in the sense that you all are not tight to where God's Spirit cannot move freely. So doing that, know your material as best you can. This is important. Practice, practice, practice. My parents told me, if they told me once, the story. They told me a million times. Practice makes perfect. Being unprepared is one thing that can set up a worship experience for complete disaster. Come prepared, and make sure that the people that you're leading come prepared, as they should be coming in prepared. No matter how many times you may have, done this one particular song or set in the past, always come prepared and ready for that worship experience, because you don't know the life that will be there to hear that or encounter that move of God for the first time. And so we have to treat it as such. The other big thing that I would say is that really I've had to learn over the years, but that helps a worship set flow so well, is transitions. Transitions, they're often overlooked. Flowing from one worship song to the next, to me, is as important as the songs themselves. One way to improve your transitions is to practice them even in your rehearsals. Let the rehearsals be worshipful. Let the Spirit direct and lead, and it'll lead to some amazing transition moments that you'll even feel in your practice, and that'll become what you do in your service. And then sometimes in a service, that transition is so important. The difference between a great or an awkward worship set are the transitions between songs, in my opinion. Periods of unplanned silence, while your band looks for charts, or you take a drink of water, and there's nothing happening. That's going to make the congregation feel uneasy. It's going to just feel awkward, and it just gets weird for everybody. So during your rehearsal, think through how you will get from song 1 to song 2 with minimal disruption. And it goes a long way. If song 1 is in the same key as song 2, you can easily transition to the new song without even stopping your music, continuing to flow. If you are changing keys, you can have somebody playing transition into the new key with just pads or something like that. If you can't transition musically, then think about transitioning with a scripture or an encouraging word to the congregation. It doesn't mean you sneak a preach. It just means you're helping transition to the next song, asking people to worship, lift your hands and worship. Let's prepare, ourselves for what God's wanting to do. Just making that a smooth transition is very important, so it doesn't get awkward. And it helps so much, the flow of things, and even the flow of the Spirit, so where it's not just so abrupt and broken up. The other thing is tempo and dynamics, and understanding tempo and dynamics in a worship set. A worship set should have some sort of dynamic flow. This is usually it's created by planning songs of different tempos in a way that takes the congregation to your chosen destination. It's very boring to sing 4 songs of similar tempos. Now, I know it's not about boring or not boring, but I think you get my point. So variety is the key. You know, if you're staying in the same tempo the whole time and you're doing 4 or 5 songs like that, it's pretty exhausting. So there's no rule for whether to sing faster songs at the beginning and slower songs at the end. You know, I've seen it done very effectively both ways, as long as you know where you're going. If you want to end your worship time in a quiet, reverent manner, where it's, you know, consecration, playing your upbeat celebration songs, you know, at the beginning of your set, or something to that effect, to get them engaged and going in the service, and then continue to flow to maybe a mid to slower direction. You know, so destinations, as I mentioned, are a big deal. I touched on this, but you need to decide where you want your people that you're leading to be when the music finishes. Do you want them in an atmosphere of awe and reverence of who God is and what He's done? And do you want them to be celebrating, you know, like on Easter? Do we want them celebrating the beginning, right before the message? Where do we want that to end up? Is there a certain song your pastor would like for you to sing right before the sermon? And having that communication with him prior to you even having a practice. If the music is after the sermon, do you want people to leave church feeling encouragement and upbeat celebration tone, or do you want it to be consecration? So those are important. Transitions and destinations help the flow drastically when it comes to worship in a worship set. You know, I want to be led when I'm in the audience. I love to be led by someone who isn't afraid to both communicate with me and with God. It's a fine line between leading and worshiping, but isn't that our calling? To lead people in worship as we ourselves worship. So I want to be led by somebody who is a worshiper, who's going to worship whether they've got a microphone or on a platform or not, who lives that life of worship, who is continually showing that in their life. And then you see that come through when they're leading worship. They're comfortable, they're flowing, you can tell they're in the flow of the Spirit, and it's just a smooth worship time, and you're able to engage and not be distracted by anything that's happening up on that stage. And that's the type of worship leader that I want to be led by. And so that's what I've tried to practice and emulate. And so don't get stuck. You know, do not get stuck in a rut. I love songs from past eras, but don't stay there. You know, mix that up. We do new worship songs, but we'll pull in old ones as well and fit that in the flow, and just they all work together. There are a ton of great new songs, but it's okay to reach back, but don't get stuck in a rut or one genre. I mean, one area of music, in the sense of one artist or one person that you like, one style there, whether it be contemporary or black gospel, whatever. But have a good mix of that. But there again, that goes with knowing your audience and knowing your church, knowing your congregation. And then I would say, you know, be accountable. You hear this a lot from ministers or in ministry in general. I'm also a pastor, so we hear this a lot, you know, that we've got to have accountability. But I think it's very important too, as ministers of music and worship leaders, that we have accountability to our spouse, our pastor, that we have an accountability partner, maybe another worship leader. That's why I think this worship community is so fantastic. You know, it's just great accountability, and to ask tough questions, you know, to somebody, to hold me accountable with things maybe that they see. You know, if I'm leading worship at an event, maybe they see something, they're like, what's going on there, and they can have that honest conversation with me and help me stay on point and on track, because I never want to get distracted or lose the effectiveness of leading worship and leading other people into the presence of God. The other thing I would say, and I'm kind of wrapping this up here in the last minute, but have fun. And that, sometimes we just forget that, worship is supposed to be a joyful experience. Worship is so much fun for me. Not like I'm just going there saying, "Oh, this is all about just having a good time." I'm not saying that, but take time to laugh with your team. To enjoy those moments that you're in the presence of God, to take that in, to let it be joyful experiences. Worship is a high calling, and we need to take it seriously, but isn't the joy of the Lord our strength? So making sure that joy is flowing, smile when you're on stage, show people it's a joy and a pleasure to worship God. And that's just what I wanted to share with you in the sense of some practicalities of leading worship. Brother Hoffy?
That's excellent. Smile and enjoy it.
Yeah, that's right.
You'd be surprised. I'm sure you're not surprised, but there are many worship leaders that just sometimes, even on a practical note, they just look sad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look like they're trudging through rough times.
Right. Every time. Doesn't matter if they're singing something upbeat or not. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to. It's time for some questions. Those of you that want to maybe ask Brother Chantry some things, but I wanted to start off with a question I had, and hopefully it's not too heavy of a question, but it is something I do hear some, and that is this: what would you tell worship leaders that, for lack of a better term, maybe beat themselves up or blame themselves about song choices when things maybe just don't work and there's no response or not what they thought? Or I've seen this and dealt with this with people, and they really blame themselves. Would you address that?
Sure. Obviously, we can't control the attitude of the people coming in the congregation. Our job is to simply try to get them into the presence of God, to lead them there, and to do it to the best of our ability. There's some days here where, my goodness, it's icy outside, and so people come in a bad mood, and it takes you 3 songs to just get them halfway, responding, and you can take that personally. I've taken that personally before and said, "What have I done wrong?" Or what? And we've put in the time, and we've put in the prayer, and we've put in the preparation. And I think if you are doing those things, you have nothing to feel bad about. Our audience is really the audience of one, and it's, our worship is to God, and it's to also, as we worship Him, it creates that atmosphere for other people to feel that liberty and that freedom, to worship. And so we can't beat ourselves up if we're doing our part. If we're putting in the time and the effort that we're supposed to, and we're praying and we're asking for God's anointing. I've told teams before, we'll feel the power and presence of God, and we know that it's there and it's been working on us and through us, and nobody's really responding. We can still walk away knowing that we've done our part and feel good about it. And sometimes it is discouraging because we really feel good about something we've prepared or a set that we've been praying over, and in practice it feels great, and then we get into the service and it just falls flat, and you're thinking, my God, I can't plan a set to save my life.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily true. Sometimes it's just the attitude of the people, or something that's happened. We don't know what they're going through always, and as we worship God, we're giving Him our best, and that's okay. And I don't know if that really answers the
Yeah.
question.
Oh yeah.
Direct.
I think that it does. I wanted to add something to that. Brother Calvin Jean told me one time that I loved his response to this was, he said, just like you wouldn't take the credit if things just blew up, you can't take the blame either.
No, right. That's a good way to say
I
that.
thought that was a great way to think of that, and maybe that'll help somebody tonight to think about that. You wouldn't take the credit if it just went bonkers. You can't take the blame either. So
Absolutely.
it just helps to take that weight off of you. And I think too, as I don't think we should think that way, because then it feels like, well, if we push the right buttons or we sing the right songs, and you can't
Right.
manipulate anything like
No,
that.
we can't, and we've got to
So
trust that Spirit of God that we seek after, right, to move, and so, yeah, and And I think that's a good point, and thank you for that question, because a lot of people, we're all going to have a bad set. You
Yeah.
know, we're all going to have a set that we did
Yep.
fail to do the right homework, and
Right.
and when we have those, we say that's on me,
Yep.
and I've carried that around for a few days, and so I make sure the next time I'm more prepared. But
Yeah.
then there's other times we do everything we can do, and it's just not happening
Yeah.
in the sense of the people. But I believe when we worship God, that there's always praise that goes up to His throne room, and it makes a difference somewhere, somehow.
We have a question, Brother Chantry, from Amy in Virginia. I'm going to put her on with you.
All right. Hello, Amy.
Let me see if I can unmute her mic. Sister Amy, are you
Hi,
there?
I am here.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, I was thinking about what you've been saying in our church here in Chesapeake, Virginia. And we use a lot of people on our praise team to lead worship in a service. And I was just wondering if you had an opinion or a thought about how many different people is most effective to use during a service. Like, do you generally use the same person to lead every song? Do you base it on the lead part of the song? Like, how is there a rule of thumb for that?
Great question, Amy. And there is no right or wrong way. It depends on your set. There are times, we just had this last Sunday or the Sunday before, where each song needed a different vocalist, because some of the solo parts or the verses were led by a female, some were led by a male, and actually one of our main worship leaders was out of town. And so they all kind of stepped up and played a big role in that, as a team. But we tend to always have one person that we just say you're designated to make sure it's flowing, and that doesn't mean preaching in between songs. That sometimes people mistake that as, oh, I need to preach, between songs, or get everybody worked up. But it just means it keeps it flowing where we're worshiping, whether it's in the mic or even just pulled out of the mic a little bit, but there's still somebody there to help that can keep going. So it's great that you have multiple worship leaders. I think that's awesome. But to answer your question, there is not a wrong or right way. I just have found that it helps to always have someone that you tell in the beginning, just or even if you want to assign it per song. Brother Hoffy, you did this with, I know, at Urshan or Gateway, where you would assign different people to a song and say, following this song, I want you to kind of make sure that it flows to the next thing. So no, it's not wrong on what you're doing. It's actually a great thing that you have that many people that can lead. I think that's a tremendous blessing. Does that answer your question, Amy?
It does. Thank you very much.
All right, absolutely.
Thank you, Amy. Good to hear from you.
Good to hear from you.
I had another question for you real quick. Something I was thinking about that I think maybe people would have questions to ask this, or a question about this, was how much verbal direction or instruction do you prefer a worship leader to take their liberty in a service, or do you like any?
Sure, that's a great question. In a perfect world, we wouldn't need any.
Yeah.
Right? If everybody in our congregations were coming with the mindset to worship, we would not need anybody in the mic cheerleading, so to speak, because there would be such an atmosphere, spirit of worship in the congregation. You could just flow from one song to the next. It'd be beautiful worship, but that's not usually where we all live, from service to service. So we do ask for just slight direction or verbal praise to God, cues like that. Like I said, not preaching, but there's just things you can say that helps the people to engage as the song ends, and it helps that transition to the next song. One of our worship leaders, who's an amazing singer, the other day, I could tell he was holding back just a little bit, and he's got it. And so I said, before the next service, I said, let loose a little bit, because that set needed a little bit more push.
Yeah.
And you can know by the set if it needs to be pushed a little bit, prompted a little bit more to get the people to buy into it a little bit. Maybe it's a new song, something where it needs a little bit more, but very minimal, not derailing the set by talking for a long amount of time in between.
Yeah, I like that. I on the same note as that, our bishop here, Pastor Dugas, he's always made me laugh when one of his big things is, if a song's not working, move on to the next one.
Yes.
Don't just stay there and stay there.
Don't try to make it work.
No, just move on to the next one, because it may be the next one. And he has a great point, because I think sometimes we try to stay sometimes too long.
Yes.
Do you agree?
Yes, I do agree. And that's where praying for that sensitivity.
Yeah.
Is so important. And I've always prayed, God, help me to be sensitive to the flow and the moving of your spirit in this worship, set, and help me to feel after you and to know when it's time to move on. And so praying for that sensitivity is important, because you can absolutely kill a move of God in a worship experience by staying too long on a song, trying to make it work because you had a move of God in your car while you were listening to it, so it has the potential, but nobody's buying into it at that particular moment, and so you're trying to make it happen, but just moving on. And I think that's where knowing your destination comes in handy, because there's some songs that we plan that we know they're not going to lock in and just be like ready to worship right here, but it's going to set up that third or fourth song. We're going to be locked in and ready to go deep into worship. So, knowing where you're going is important there.
That's great. Well, I don't see a whole lot of other questions. If you have any other questions, go ahead and send them. As we're wrapping this up tonight, it's been great to have Brother Chantry with us, just because I love having people on that, of course, like you, Brother Chantry, has experience doing that, because we need to hear that. We need to hear from leaders, and that's what these webinars are for. I'm excited to hear everything you talked about tonight. The thing you said right at the beginning, I loved. You said you like to think as we are lead worshipers. I like that. That's just a different spin on that. But my pastor's wife back home, she said something not too long ago to me that was pretty good. She said, sometimes we always say that we're worship leaders, and we are, but at the same time, she was basically saying, sometimes just worship the Lord. People will follow your lead.
Absolutely.
Just worship.
Absolutely. That's the principle behind that statement I made. It's just leading by example.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you, Brother Chantry, for being here. I really do appreciate your time, and I know that you have a lot going on, but it's just great to hear from you. And thank you for being a great example to everyone that's out there. Great singer, and come from a great line of musicians and singers. And I love your example that you've set. And of course, now pastoring in church in Arkansas, and doing a great job. Have a wonderful music pastor there, Brother Jeremy Guzman, doing a great job. Give him a little shout out.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
He's a great guy. But thank you all for joining tonight. Next month, we'll have another great webinar, another guest on. So thank you for taking part in this. And I hope it's been a blessing to you tonight. I hope you really kind of heard some things tonight that you can gain strength from and knowledge from. And it's just great to hear some of the things you said tonight, Brother Chantry. Thank you for coming. Any last things you want to share as you close it out?
It's an honor. Thank you very much. And I pray God's blessings upon everyone that partook tonight. God bless you.
Thank you, everyone, and have a great night. We'll see you next month for our May UPCI Music Ministry Talk Music Webinar. That's a mouthful. See you next month. Thank you, Brother Chantry.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.